What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another Big Board Politics video. So today I'm going to be dissecting the very different battlefields in the midterm elections from a numbers standpoint. Alright, so we're going to start with the Senate. So as you can see by this map, the Senate is being fought mainly on turf that the president won in 2016. And there's states that really have, like if you look at Montana, North Dakota, Missouri, they have Democratic incumbents, but they're rural states mainly, and they're states where the president is still extremely popular, even though that might not be the case necessarily from a national standpoint. So, for instance, let's look at a state like Montana. Donald Trump won the state by 20%, and right now you have a Democratic incumbent in the state. And so these are looking like prime, like pickup opportunities for the Republicans. However, when you look at polling, that's not necessarily the case. However, if you look at a state like Missouri and North Dakota, these are two states that Donald Trump won handedly in 2016, and are have strong GOP candidates running against the Democratic incumbents. Another state where that's the case is Indiana. So let's say that the Republican candidate wins in those three states, and then polls are tightening, but it still looks like Ted Cruz should be able to hold on in Texas. It looks like a state that he is favored in. His competitor from the left, Beto O'Rourke, he hasn't been leading in a single poll. So even though the polls are tightening, it's still looking like it's Ted Cruz's race to lose at this point. So you give them, that already puts Republicans at the majority. And then let's say you throw in another state like Florida, where this is gonna be one of the most highly contested races in 2018, because you have a pretty popular governor. His disapproval is only in the low 30s, if that. High 20s, low 30s. So the vast majority of the state approves of him. And you have a also fairly popular Democratic incumbent senator, where it's just, and Florida's always a battleground state, but with the current political climate, it looks like this is really shaping up to be a very, very good race. But at the moment, polls have gone both ways. But if you give this state to Bill Nelson, and then Tennessee, where you got another really, really good race. The primaries actually happened today, August 2nd, on a Thursday, for some reason. But Marsha Blackburn and Phil Bredesen left Tennessee governor when he retired with 70% approval rating. So even though this is a Republican state, clearly a Republican state, always goes for Republicans in presidential years, Democrats are looking at this as a possible pickup opportunity. So let's say hypothetically they were able to win that race and then hold on to some races that the polls are showing the Democratic candidate leading by at least 10 points. So right now you're looking at a 51-43 seat majority for Republicans already. So then you've got a state like Arizona. Now this is going to be a really good race as well, but we don't even know who the Republican nominee is going to be. And polls have Kyrsten Sinema up by, depending on the candidate, like an average of 4 or 5 points. So if you give this race to the Republican, it's still a red state. It's going to be a really close race, just like almost all of these Senate races are. But if you give it to the Republican, that gives them even more of a hold in the Senate. And then Nevada, that's going to be another really good one. Polls have had it both ways. Jackie Rosen's been leading by single digits, and then a recent poll I saw had Dean Heller leading by about 2 points, 1 or 2 points. So it's really going to be a close race. But Dean Heller is fairly unpopular in Nevada if you look at polling, and if this really is a Democratic wave year, then he will probably lose his seat. So that's another race that's going to be really highly contested, though. New Mexico shouldn't be any contest. I don't know why I left that blank for so long. West Virginia, you'd think it'd be a state where, if you look back in 2016, Trump won the state extremely handedly. and you'd think it'd be a really easy win for Trump and the Republicans. However, Joe Manchin's pretty popular, and the Republicans are having a hard time painting him as someone who will just always vote with Democrats because he is a conservative Democrat. So one thing I wanted to point out in this race, however, is that if you look within the state of West Virginia, so the area where Joe Manchin gets his votes, it's the 3rd congressional district, and really it's this area right down here in the southern part of the state is where Joe Manchin really gets most of his votes. And in the Republican primaries, the runner-up candidate is the rep from the 3rd district, the current rep from the 3rd district. So Republicans were thinking if he won, he would have a better chance against Joe Manchin because these are his voters more than they are necessarily for Joe Manchin's. So the candidate that ended up winning is I believe the current Attorney General, and he did his best up in the northern part of the state where Joe Manchin normally does poorly anyways. So if you look at it like that, I'd say Joe Manchin's probably going to hold on here unless something changes. But as of today, I'd say Joe Manchin holds a seat there. And the last race we're looking at is Montana. Jon Tester, normally I'd say that he would probably lose, especially if Donald Trump wasn't the president right now. But if you look at the guy he's running against, it's a state auditor. He's not a well-known candidate. And Jon Tester, if you look at campaign finances, has multiples higher in his war chest, more money. And so I'd say that Jon Tester right now, at least, is looking like a pretty good bet to hold on to that seat. So as of right now, I'd say a realistic scenario, obviously plus or minus a couple seats either way, you're looking at 52 Republicans to 48 Democrats, meaning Republicans would net Republicans would net 1 seat in the Senate from the current makeup if you go 49 Democrats. So that's the Senate. And in the Senate, in these states that Trump did well in, he can be a great help for these Republican candidates, especially the lesser known ones, because obviously, like I said earlier, he's still well liked in these states. But the House is a completely different story. I'll try and make this quick. A lot of these districts in the House that are up for grabs, if you look closely, a lot of these districts that are lean or in some cases likely, but all the competitive districts, if you look closely, are in suburban, well-educated areas that swung hard against Trump and continue to be Trump's worst polling area other than urban areas, obviously. But these suburban areas are really going to be, especially if we look at a state like Minnesota, it's clearly you're going to see a lot of suburban voters who, at least in polling, have shown that they do not approve of the president's job performance. We'll see if they hold true to that or if they vote for, in a lot of cases, the Republican incumbents. A great state to look at is Southern California. In Southern California, you've got multiple districts where you have current Republican incumbents in LA suburbs, and in places where they normally do pretty well, but the president could actually be having a negative effect on their races. So obviously, as of today, I'd have to say that the Democrats are favored to win the House. However, Republicans are favored to win the Senate for sure, obviously. And the House is really a toss-up, though. I think it's being overrated, and how handedly the Democrats have it, just because of simple structural advantages for the GOP, with many states gerrymandered, and just the way that the districts are set up, that Republicans are much stronger in these places than they're being given credit for. And so the House is really going to it's going to come down to a couple key seats, and I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on how they use the president in trying to retain the House, because, like I said, he might actually be hurting them more than he's helping them in the House, whereas in the Senate, he's their best tool, and he could help them gain a bigger majority in the Senate than even I predicted. So, thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more content like this, feel free to subscribe. And also, if you want to see a video or some type of analysis, just leave it in the comments, and I would definitely do it. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.